Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our Hanafi fiqh class. We are doing the kitab known as I'ala Sunan of Mulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi rahimahullah. Tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we are starting a new chapter. It is Ahkamul Miyah, the chapters regarding waters, and we'll deal with that in due course. But that's on page 257 of volume 1. So let us begin. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So Ahkamul Miyah, it's a lengthy chapter, and you will brush over the topic because there's a lot to be said on the topic, and when you actually look at it, we'll be skipping a lot of pages because we tend to only do the ahadith and the basic fiqh ruling at the end of the day. We don't delve into the ikhtilaful fuqaha, what the other madhahib have to say, what is their proofs, and all that sort of stuff. That's why we've managed to do 257 pages of this kitab. Had we been reading each and every word on the page, we would probably have not even passed 50 pages by now. Okay, maybe we'd have done 80, but anyway, we would definitely not have been as far as what we currently are. Also, a lot of the times, much of these masail don't necessarily relate to the normal man in the street, but you'll see as we come along. So Ahkamul Miyah, the chapter regarding waters, because water is of different types and there are different things which affect water and things of that sort. So the first chapter under this broad heading of waters is Babu Najasatil Ma'il Qalili biwuqu'i najisin fihi qalilan kana aw kathira. He says this chapter deals with the fact that water which is of a small quantity, it becomes impure by any amount of impurity falling in it, whether it's a lot of impurity or a little. So let's do the first hadith. You see, the thing is, we tend to understand these masail already because we know these things growing up. But obviously, since this kitab is giving us the proofs behind the rulings, that's why we do all of these hadith here. So, hadith number 216. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يبولن أحدكم في الماء الدائم الذي لا يجري ثم يغتسل منه رواه البخاري. Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, none of you should ever urinate in standing water, still water. You have a little pond, you have in today's times these blow up swimming pools. Maybe you've got a fish pond outside where you've got your koi fish in. Now you go and you urinate inside it. For example, maybe you were running and you couldn't make it to your pool, or like unfortunately some people have turned today pools into some other type of toilet. So while they're in the water, they just blow it all out over there. So things of the sort. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, none of you should ever do such a thing, that you put your impurity now into the water. Al-ma'u da'imi alladhi la yajri. It is standing water, still water, which is not flowing. So we make a distinction between flowing water, we make a distinction between a small amount of water. So, and still a small amount of water is, so to speak, still water in any case. So it's still standing water which is not moving. If you have urinated in it, which you should not be doing, but if you had done so, or any other impurity for that matter had fallen into it, then you cannot make ghusl from it. But obviously, it don't mean you can't only make ghusl and that you can make wudu. Not at all. The purpose of this hadith is to show us that the minute impurity has fallen into this small pond of water, then the water completely has become impure. So let's put it this way. You've got a little koi pond in your yard, and then your nose bled and he dropped in the pool. Or you had a guest over and he was drunk and his bottle fell out of his hand into the pool. Or think of any of a number of different things. You had children playing outside there and he threw his dirty nappy inside there. Whatever the case may be, impurity has now fallen into that water. Automatically, the entire water becomes impure, irrespective of whether you can see the impurity, smell the impurity, taste the impurity. It doesn't matter. When impurity has fallen into it, it is now najis. You cannot use it. I tend to give the example often of, for example, you got a jug of water. You take one drop of urine and you throw it in that jug. The water immediately becomes impure. That one drop of urine, in the greater scheme of things, does nothing to that jug of water, because you're not going to smell it in the water. You're not going to see any difference happening. Sure, it may happen with some people, but the point being, generally, it doesn't happen. It's not going to change the color. It's not going to change the taste. It's not going to change the smell. You wouldn't even know there's urine in it. But the minute you come to know there's a drop of urine in it, you're like, get that filth away from me. So the entire thing becomes impure. So that's what it means. So that's why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, had impurity fallen into this water, don't make ghusl from it. So if you cannot make ghusl from it, you cannot make wudu from it, because ghusl is a purification of your body. So you have water which is known as tahir, a mutahhir, water which has the capability of purifying you. So if water is not suitable for ghusl, then obviously it's not suitable for wudu either, and vice versa. Whereas if you have this water becomes impure. You have water which is pure but is not a mutahhir. For example, you've made wudu. The leftover water as it fell from you into, for example, into a bucket, that is used water, ma'ul musta'mal. We'll get into this in due course. I'm just throwing out a couple of things to give you a broad picture of what we're dealing with. So now that water has fallen into a bucket, you wash your face with it. There's no dirt in the water. It's clean. But the thing is that it's used water. It was used to remove your impurity, to put you into a state of purity. So there were no impurities on your face, but you had no wudu. So you used it, it gave you wudu. Now it can't give you wudu a second time. The water may be pure. It may be tahir, but it is not a mutahhir. So, we'll do that, like I said, in due course, but, just throwing it out for the sake of it. So anyway, that was the first hadith. Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah, is the narrator of this hadith. So let's move on. Now, like you can see, big pages, we skip at the time because of the amount of differing viewpoints and all the views of the various fuqaha and things which are being mentioned over here. Okay, let's move on. Hadith number 217. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا ولغ الكلب في إناء أحدكم فليرقه ثم ليغسله 7 مرات. رواه مسلم والنسائي والدارقطني وقال إسناده حسن، رواته كلهم ثقات، وأخرجه ابن خزيمة في صحيحه ولفظه فليهرقه كذا في التلخيص. Hadrat Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that إذا ولغ الكلب, that when a dog licks في إناء أحدكم, for example, you had a bowl of water over there and the dog comes and licks up, laps up some water, then what happens? فليرقه, then pour all of that water out. ثم ليغسله 7 مرات, then wash that container out 7 times. Now, we're not going to be dealing specifically with the topic of the impurity of dogs and how to purify containers and stuff like this here. That's a chapter for another time. But since it has been mentioned, I'll just give a brief thing in this regard. Now, you see this hadith here simply says, wash it 7 times. You'll come across another narration which says, wash it 7 times and 1 time should be with sand. So you'll find a hadith which says, wash with sand and thereafter all with water. And another narration which mentions the opposite way around, to first all wash it with water and finally with sand. So you have all such a hadith. And now you are seeing one where no sand is mentioned, just plain water. And you'll find also an additional narration which says wash it 3 times. And then eventually you find what the fuqaha say, that even if it were to be washed once and the impurity is all removed, even that would suffice. So you'll find many different viewpoints amongst the fuqaha. Like I say, we'll reach that point when we get to the topic of dogs licking and lapping up water. For now, we're doing this hadith, but like I say, don't think, well, we did one hadith, it said 7 times, that means if a dog licked your hand, you need to necessarily wash it 7 times. Not necessarily the case. Other madhahib differ. Like I said, you have multiple ahadith on the topic, so one takes this hadith, one takes that hadith, and so on and so forth. But we deal with that chapter when we get there. For now, what is the purpose of this? Dog, no visible dirt on the dog, for example. It's saliva. You got your bowl of water over there, or you, like I gave the example again, once again, you got your koi pond. So the dog comes and he's thirsty and he licks a little bit of the water. The thing is that dogs are impure, whereas cats are pure. So you have now a dog, and the dog has come and lapped up a little bit of the water. In this situation over here, immediately the entire water becomes impure. That's why the water has to be thrown away. You cannot go and use the water. You can't make wudu with the water. You can't make, and that is, you can't make ghusl or anything. That's why Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, throw it away. Why? Because impurity essentially has entered into the water, making the entire water impure. So now you don't go and use such water at all. So yeah, Rawahu Muslim wa Nasa'i wa Daraqutni wa qala isnaduhu hasanun. Okay, I did read all of this. So Imam Muslim rahimahullah is the reporter of this hadith. So is Imam Nasa'i rahimahullah and Imam Daraqutni, who said that the chain of narration is authentic. All of the narrators are reliable. Imam Ibn Khuzaymah rahimahullah also reports this hadith in his Sahih, and his wording is فَلْيُهْرِقْهُ instead of فَلْيُرِقْهُ فَلْيُهْرِقْهُ كذا في التلخيص. This is how it's mentioned in التلخيص الحبير of Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah. يهرقه and يريق إراقة, both of it are synonyms. It means the same thing, to pour it out, to spill it, in other words. إراقة الدم, and this word yuhriqhu is also used in another hadith, that the best one is the one who goes out in jihad and wa yuhriqa damuhu, that his horse is killed and his blood is spilled. So both words, it means the same thing, that you have to throw such water away. It's impure. So you understand now from the same hadith that assuming something else fell into that water which is impure, whether it be urine or whatever, that water cannot be used, it must be thrown away. The only difference would come in that the hadith of washing 7 times, etc., is relating to a dog. So it didn't come and say that for any najis thing. This is something specific for dogs. But anyway, like I said, we'll do that chapter when we reach there. For now, just remember that if any impurity falls into any small quantity of water, that water has to be thrown away. So if you've got a fish tank and some impurity fell into it, if you have a fish tank and some urine has fallen into it, you throw that water away, you put fresh water in. So that sort of thing. But specifically, the reason why you throw this water away is because it is your container of water that you plan on using. But in the western part of the world, and the more advanced countries, when you're living in cities and towns and you're not in a drought situation, then you've got water. You can open up a tap and you get water. You don't necessarily have to walk and collect a bucket of water and store it there. If we were in that situation where you're storing buckets of water, now comes along a dog and he leaks the water, then you're sitting with these sort of issues. So it all depends on where you live in the world. Such things. Okay, let's put it this way. If you are a poor person and you're living in a informal settlement, as the term is used, people who live in shacks and stuff like this here, they don't have running water, they don't have anything like this. They go out and take a bucket with them and they get some water. So you have their stray dogs running around there. So a stray dog comes and he leaks the water. So for them, they would end up in this situation, even though it's in a modern country and everything of the sort. But poverty leads you to such situations where such cases can still happen. Whereas if you're living in a more affluent area, the dog, he'll go lick out of your toilet, but your tap is closed, so there's no way that dogs are going to be licking out of your containers from that angle. But anyway, so that was that hadith. Let's see, I think that's maybe the last one from the chapter. Okay, now we have 2 more. Okay, hadith number 218. عن ابن سيرين أن زنجيا وقع في زمزم يعني فمات فأمر به ابن عباس فأخرج وأمر بها أن تنزح. So Imam Muhammad ibn Sirin rahimahullah mentions that a Zanjian, meaning an African person, he had fell into the well of Zamzam. يعني فمات. So he fell into the water, into the well, and he died. He drowned there. So his dead body was laying in the well. So Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, you understand also the time frame from this now, that Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas, who was situated in Makkah, and he was in his age at this time, and he was like the Imam of Makkah, so to speak. So Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu was consulted. He said, take the body out. Obviously, he's dead now. Take his body out of the well. But now, when a person dies, obviously the body starts to decompose. So it is impurities and stuff. So obviously, the well of Zamzam was now made impure. So Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he gave the command that the well must now be emptied. And this is a topic that you find in the classical books of fiqh, all of them. How many buckets must come out of a well and all this sort of stuff. Like I say, in South Africa, in the UK, America, these type of countries, we don't exactly have such issues. Or yes, you'd have it in the more, like I say, the affluent areas, affluent people. If you've got your own borehole and now your borehole is not closed up properly, so something fell into your borehole and died over there, then you can end up using this mas'ala. Otherwise, if not, these type of masail don't exactly happen with you, because you don't have access to a well. I mean, how many of us actually have seen a well in real life that we actually came to use something? It don't exist in our daily lives. But go to Pakistan and India and Bangladesh and many of those countries, people still use wells because people don't have, there's no sewage and what you call those things now, running water and pipes and everything. They don't have such things. So people are still reliant on wells. So it's not like these masail are obsolete. They may be obsolete in our lives that we live because we are but on the wealthier side that we don't have to deal with such things. But there are still people on a daily basis in this world who have to deal with such things every day. Anyway, so Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he now gave the command that the well must be emptied. قال فغلبتهم عين جاءتهم من الركن فأمر بها فدست بالقباط والمطارف حتى نزحوها. So the Tabi'in, now they started to empty the water. But فغلبتهم عين, that there was a spring that was coming from the side of the Ruknul Yamani. The Rukn that is spoken about here is the Ruknul Yamani by the Kaaba. From that angle, from that area, there was a spring which was pouring now into the well of Zamzam. So it made it impossible for them to be able to remove the well because the water was spurting in one way. So Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu gave the command to seal the hole. So what they did, bil qabati. Qabati is plural of the word qibt. You may have heard of Hazrat Maria al-Qibtiyya radiallahu anha, Copt, as you may say in English. So qibt here refers to a soft cotton garment which used to come from Egypt. So it was a specific type of clothing. It was in vogue at the time. So in other words, Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, okay, the same with matarif. Matarif is also a plural form. It refers to clothing, like a silky type cloth. So Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he said, take these clothes and plug the hole. So the hole was plugged. حتى نزحوها. So the hole was plugged for the duration of time so that they could empty now the water from the well. فلما نزحوها, after they had removed all the water from the well of Zamzam, انفجرت عليهم, then the water burst through once again. And obviously, you know how it is with wells. The water comes up from the bottom, and the water was now coming in from this spring that was coming from the side of the Ruknul Yamani. So it filled up once again, and that's how you purify a well when something impure falls in it. So because it was a person, he died, impurities are released from the body, the water was made impure. So you understand also from this that even though Zamzam is the purest water on earth, even that gets impure. So, it doesn't mean that it's Zamzam, it's forever pure. It's always great water, but if impurity falls in it, it becomes impure. So if you've got a glass of Zamzam over there, and for example, some impurity or the other falls inside it, even that Zamzam has to be thrown away. You cannot make use of it. So anyway, that is how, like I say, we'll deal with the chapter on how much and, or at least I should say, we're not exactly going to deal with that chapter because it's not something that applies in our daily lives. Like I say, it's not obsolete because many people still deal with it, but that chapter will probably come at a later stage, or if even so much, because this kitab is here to prove the mas'ala itself, not to delve specifically what is the specific hukm and the ikhtilaf of fuqaha, not so much that point as much as it is to establish that if something happens, this is the dalil behind it. So here's our dalil to say that if something something dies in water in a well, then the water must be removed from that well, depending now on the size of the well, how many buckets and stuff. Like I say, you can find it in the books of fiqh, Quduri, Hidayah, Bada'i Sana'i, Mabsut. Take your pick, you can go and check it up over there, but simply put, the water is to be removed. So anyway, رواه الدارقطني وإسناده صحيح. Imam al-Darqutni rahimahullah is the narrator of this hadith, and the chain of narration is authentic. So simply put, this is our proof that, like I said, if impurity falls into a well, so where we moved from being a little container of water earlier, we are now dealing with a well, which obviously, as you know, is a lot more water than that little bit. But still, when you have something of this impurity which falls into it's not running water, it's still essentially still water in that sense. So therefore, the water still becomes impure, and you still now have to pull out the water. So moving on to the next hadith, hadith number 219. عن عطاء أن حبشيا وقع في زمزم فمات فأمر ابن الزبير فنزح ماءها فجعل الماء لا ينقطع فنظر فإذا عين تجري من قبل الحجر الأسود فقال ابن الزبير حسبكم. So Imam Aqa, he narrates that a Habashi, an African man, he had fallen into the well of Zamzam and he died. So a second person had fallen into the well and died. And Hazrat Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhu, he gave the command. So the water was removed from the well of Zamzam, and while they were trying to remove the water from the well, the water never went down because, you know, they were dishing and dishing and dishing, and the level was staying the same. So when they looked, what's going on? They saw that there was a spring coming in from the direction of the Hajrul Aswad. Hajri Aswad, as people would say. So they saw that this spring was filling the well of Zamzam. That is why, no matter how fast they were dishing, the water was not going down any lower. So when Hazrat Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhu saw this, then he said, Hasbukum, it's enough now. In other words, the water had so much water. Let's say the well held 100 liters, for example, 100 liters of water was in the well. So they dished 100 liters already out, but that spring was filling the water up at such a fast rate that they didn't even know it. So they dished the whole water of the well out, but that spring filled the whole well up once again. So he said, it's enough. You know, you don't have to pull anymore. You've essentially removed all the water from the well, so that is enough for you. رواه الطحاوي وإسناده صحيح وابن أبي شيبة ورجاله رجال صحيحين وصححه ابن الهمام في فتح القدير. Imam al-Tahawi rahimahullah is the narrator of this hadith, and the chain of narration is authentic. Imam Ibn Abi Shayba rahimahullah reports it as well, and the narrators therein are all the narrators found in Bukhari and Muslim. And Imam Ibn al-Humam, the Hanafi faqih, Imam Ibn al-Humam rahimahullah, he grades it as being authentic in Fath al-Qadir. Fath al-Qadir is the sharah of basically of Hidayah, so which is a sharah of Quduri, which is like the master book of Hanafi fiqh, small, detailed, and all the other kitabs, a lot of them are based on Quduri. In any case, long story short, this hadith proves the same like the previous one, two Sahaba showing that when something impure falls into the water, because a case of a person dying is a case of impurity, so therefore the water must be pulled out, and the water was pulled out. In one case, the hole was plugged because they saw it early, so they plugged the hole and they pulled all the water out. In the second case, they didn't notice it, they just kept seeing that the water was filling, the well was staying the same. Then they saw that there's actually water which was gushing in from that other side, so therefore in both cases they did their duty of removing the water from the well. They weren't told now go and plug that hole and pull another 100 liters, so essentially you are emptying the well over twice. No, you emptied him once, that is sufficient. Okay, that's the end of that chapter. Like I say, you know, in today's world, we don't exactly see this topic so much. So we think that, you know, why do you go through all of these difficulties? You know, like why are so many of the fiqh books still dealing with these issues? But you know, like I said, if you live in a bubble and you don't know what's happening in the world, if you look in places such as Take Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a country which is a war-torn country. It is still a lot of rural areas. The with the war and things going on over there, you have organizations coming from the UK, Muslim organizations going across there, doing humanitarian work, giving blankets, giving them water, because they had a drought not so long ago, before they made a Salatul Istisqa. So, you find, take Pakistan. You may think, oh, it's Pakistan. They got money to have nuclear things and stuff, but still, there's millions of people who don't have access to water. So you find a lot of these organizations, and they go around and they dig a little wells, hand pump wells. Some have got big automatic type thing, but there's lots of different things. So it's a reality. So when you found that, especially ulama coming from the Indo-Pak subcontinent, remember one thing, Maulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi rahimahullah was also from India. So, coming from that sort of a background, these were their daily things that they were seeing. So there was no need for a person to ever leave such things out, because it still applied to them. Like I say, you can even go in certain parts of Africa. Take the South African, what you call these things now, organizations. You've got Al Imdad, you've got, which other ones are there now? I suppose you can even say Gift of the Givers, and these, at least I assume Gift of the Givers. But you've got those ones, Muslim Hands and Ummah Welfare Trust from the UK, and there's a ton of others of the sort. So they'll go in Africa and they'll dig a well, like they did in Malawi and they did in Mozambique and stuff. So right here on your doorstep are people still in the same situation, and it's not that far removed. Maybe not every day is a person going to fall in, but that doesn't change the fact that, for example, you have animals. An animal climb in to try and drink from the bucket. It slips, falls in, lays in the water, and it dies, or breaks its neck and it lays there dead in. And people have come across this in India. They had many type of situations where such things happen. So, like I say, it's never been outdated. That's why it's also necessary for a person to know these masail, because we can you can use it in our modern situation as well. You're a person and you've got a swimming pool, or you got a jacuzzi, or one of these type of things as well. Like I gave an example earlier of that blow up type pools, they of the smaller types. Now, unless you've got a massive Olympic size swimming pool, you've got a small amount of water. Okay, I'm going to mention one thing here, which we'll touch maybe at a later stage, but if you have a huge quantity of water, then the water does not become impure by such things. But the huge quantity of water, essentially, as the Hanafi fuqaha have explained it, is that if you stand on one side and you agitate the water, the ripples does not reach the other end. If it reaches the other end, the water is not regarded as a huge quantity. So it would still be deemed as being impure if an impurity falls inside it. So you have a smallish size swimming pool, and you come there and you find a cat had jumped over your wall and it died in the pool. Or your dog was there and I don't know, maybe something fell on its head because it wasn't able to swim and it died in the pool. So you have these kind of situations where an animal dies in your water. Now it's your swimming pool. What do? Some people would think, okay, well, I just take him and I throw him out. It's not that simple. The water is now being deemed as being impure because it's a small quantity of still water, essentially, which has become impure. So now you're going to jump. Let's assume you want to go swim in that water. You're essentially swimming in impurities. So that's why you've got to now get rid of the water and fill your pool up again if you want to use it. So as obscure as it may seem, these masail are applicable to every single one of us. We just need to know how to apply it in our lives. Anyway, I digress a lot on the topic, and Zoom has already told us that we're about to run out of time. So I think we'll end on this point here for tonight, inshallah ta'ala. And next week we can continue from the new chapter, which is Babu طهارة الماء الكثير إلا عند تغير لونه أو ريحه أو طعمه. The chapter that water, which is of a huge amount, is pure except if its color, smell, or taste changes. We'll do those ahadith next week, inshallah ta'ala. But yeah, for tonight, it sufficed us to know that when you have a smallish quantity of water and any impurity falls inside it, that water becomes impure. The water must be thrown away, and in the case of a well, it becomes pure on its own by you just simply removing that water. In a case of a container that a dog leaked or whatever the case may be, you wash the container out. But yeah, that's basically how it goes, and then it's pure once more. So with that being said, we end on this point here for tonight, inshallah ta'ala. Until next time, we end and we say, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad, subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.